So this is really what we did the first year, which we just really enjoyed, so we thought we'd do it again, was kind of have a panel of people who have had cancer to kind of shoot the shit about what it's like to be young and have cancer. So I know they've introduced themselves, but I thought I would just introduce them a little bit more. So Jess lives in Southeast London. You're going to have to pronounce this for me.
Oh, no.
Because she has a very rare type of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which is called?
Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia.
Yeah. She wins, right?
It's not a competition, kind of.
But, as with most cancers, it's the kind of, most of us who have had cancer got cancer that is supposed to affect someone over the age of 65, which is the same for you. And we met Jess. You came to an event a few years ago, didn't you? A fundraising event, and then came on the Escape. I realized, actually, you guys have all you were on the same Escape, weren't you? So I didn't realize that until after I'd invited them all to speak, but there you go. Robin had Burkitt's lymphoma, which is another rare type of non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Yep.
I met Robin because I was cyber stalking him, because he had a blog, and I realized through reading it that he'd had the same type of chemotherapy as me, and it's quite a rare type of chemo, which involves having chemo injected into your spine. So there aren't that many of us that have had that particular joy. So I saw his blog online, and I messaged him to say, I had this 4 years ago, and I'm still here, and I think that was how we met.
Well, it made my mum cry, so.
Well, because when I was looking at my, the chemo and the type of cancer I'd had, everyone who'd had a blog had died. So I thought it was very important that if anyone was, I sort of made a promise to myself, if I ever saw anyone who was having this treatment, I would let them know I'm still alive. And Chris, you are 34, you live in South London as well. And you have had bowel cancer that spread to, and I never know how to say this, peritoneum?
The peritoneum and to my liver and to lymph nodes.
Okay, and you're still having chemo?
Yeah, so I've had, I actually don't know how many cycles of chemo. I've actually lost count. I think it's 50 plus over the past 2.5 years.
But
I actually don't know.
Not a competition.
I've lost track.
We talk quite a lot about not playing cancer top trumps, and that everybody's cancer experience is as important as the next person's. And then I remember being at the Escape with Chris, and then at some point in one of the breaks he came up to me and said, I know we're not allowed to play top trumps, but if we were playing top trumps, would I win?
Yes, probably. But you are also, while Chris is doing chemo, he's also running. So you're doing a 10K in 3 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks' time. So to raise money for Shine with some people that you work with.
about 20 people, mainly colleagues, and my sister and a couple of friends as well.
Yeah, amazing. So thank you for that. So one of the things that I think happens when you're diagnosed, well, I know happens when you're diagnosed with cancer, is that it's kind of, you get the rug pulled out from underneath you. And I think we all tend to walk around thinking that we're in control, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I'm not in control. There's a lot of other stuff out there that I can't control. And that feeling of uncertainty is something that can be really difficult to live with, because all of a sudden all of the plans that you had and all of the things that you thought were going to happen aren't sure anymore. But Chris, I was just wondering, maybe if we start with you, having done 50 rounds of chemotherapy and kind of had that roller coaster, how is that something that how do you think about it? How do you cope with it?
In terms of the control thing, I think I'm a classic control freak. So I want to know everything, and I want to be able to control it. So it's obviously difficult to manage in that context. I was told very clearly up front that my cancer wasn't curable. And I've always tried to take a kind of pragmatic approach, but also be as positive as I can, but not kind of go down the route of imagining things which actually just are unrealistic. So I suppose that's the approach. But the biggest thing for me in terms of the uncertainty is this whole kind of idea of living scan to scan, which I think a lot of people will emphasise with. It's actually really tricky, and you know you've got scans every 3 months, and you know that you should go into them with an open mind and not expect the worst and not expect the best. but inevitably, each one's different, but you end up kind of, I've got a really bad feeling about this one, or, you know, things have been going really well, maybe we're going to get some really great news. And every time it's a difficulty dealing with the scan situation. And I think that's something probably that a lot of people share, whether they've had 50 cycles of chemo or 10, it's the same.
And how do you manage that then? How do you deal with this anxiety?
I try to arrange it so I get the results as soon as I can. I know when the results are going to come. So like, you know, because there is the possibility, you know, you'll get like a sudden phone call or something and get them early. I try to kind of just sort of think about, I suppose, the best and worst case a little bit beforehand. So I'm a little bit grounded in the middle, because normally it's in the middle actually, is the outcome of a scan. And I have my husband, who's a really strong support as well. So we kind of do these things together. So, you know, he always comes to the appointments with the scan results, and we kind of talk about it beforehand. So we're sort of prepared if something really bad does happen.
And Jess, we were talking, well, I think you just emailed me earlier in the week and said, I've been thinking about my cancer USP. I've never heard of that. I hadn't heard of that concept before. But obviously with your type of cancer, because it's what's classified as a chronic cancer, right? So how does that, I guess maybe what does that mean, and then how does that work with your feelings of uncertainty?
Okay, so before I was diagnosed with cancer, I didn't know there was a thing called chronic cancer. Most people's experience is that it's acute. So my cancer's also incurable, but quite different to Chris's cancer. So mine, I'm going to have it for the rest of my life, which hopefully they've said is going to be, you know, a normal life expectancy. I'm kind of lucky in a way, because I've lived with inflammatory arthritis for the past 20 years since I was a teenager, and ulcerative colitis, both of which can be fairly serious chronic diseases. So I feel like I've been through a lot of the things that my cancer friends have been through already, like living with uncertainty. I'm very well experienced at that. Losing friends, and being prepared for the worst case scenario, because I know I could wake up one day and not be able to walk, for example. So I think I was able to accept having cancer quite quickly. The big difference is that my immune system's super weak, as opposed to just generally weak. So in January, for example, I had sepsis for the first time, and that really scared me because it was so sudden, and it came on within a couple of hours, and I'm still kind of processing the aftermath of that, really. Because I've spent most of my life trying to ignore my body and get on with life and ignore the fact I'm in pain all the time. Whereas now I have to pay very close attention to it, because a tiny change could mean something quite serious. So I think that's one thing I struggle with. And the other thing is that eventually I probably am going to get seriously ill in a way that my arthritis and colitis won't make me that ill. So I try, like Chris, to learn as much as I can and understand the symptoms, but at the same time not let that dominate my life, which is a tricky balance to take.
And I think it's interesting, because that feeling of like your body letting you down is something I think a lot of us, if you've had cancer, share, because you don't even think about your body when, you know, if you're fit and young and healthy, it's not something you've ever really given much thought to, or, you know, you might get the flu or you get a cold, but you know a couple of days later you'll be better. And then all of a sudden it's like your body's letting you down in the most severe way. And I don't know, Robin, for you, when you got ill, did you get ill quite quickly? Or?
Yeah, so my experience is quite different in that I'd run, I think, 3 half marathons in that year. And then I became quite ill quite quickly. Didn't really know what it was, and I got called into hospital. And then that day they were like, have you got a bag? You know, you need to be in treatment now. And it was like 2 days before Christmas, and you know, a bit stressful and crazy, but I didn't really have a lot of time to think about it. They just gave me a pile of forms, you know, fill these out, sign up, you know, we're going to put you on chemo in 2 days. So it was a bit of a completely different, I didn't have time to process anything, I just had to get on with it, you know, and just sit there. How am I going to tell my boss, you know, how do you know, what do you do? What's going to happen? I don't know, you know. And so for me, I just took every day, and I spent a lot of time in hospital. I just spent every day just processing it and dealing with it as it came, and just telling people, well, I will be back at some point. I don't know when, but but you just have to get through it, and then.
And you're in remission now.
Yeah. I'm being monitored, but as far as I'm aware, I mean, they said at the early stages it's going to be a hard few months, but it is within the word term was curative intent. So touch wood, I'm still here and okay. So yeah. So
and do you find then that, because I know for me, like, my foot aches and I think, okay, I've got like, cancer of the ankle or something. Yeah. So I've diagnosed myself with all kinds of different cancers. I mean, do you find that is something that...
I always wake up, because it's the thing with, it's a very quick type of cancer, technical words, but it grows very quickly. So, I wake up, and if I've got like a bit of stiff stomach or whatever, you kind of just checking it.
Yeah.
It's all okay, but you do panic, you just have to try and be positive and try and get on with life and not be too much of a worry, But I think the biggest thing I found, and I think talking to quite a few people, is that it's just a massive shock to your system, to everything, to your life. Just that word, I think the word's loaded very, the word cancer. As soon as you hear the word, it's very loaded. People always have an idea of what that is. So I didn't know anything about it until I, started to read all this literature. But it changes your life very, and everything you do, everything that's normal to you, work, whether it's, the way you interact with your friends, everything just changes. It's like,
And that's actually, I mean, that's sort of that was one of the topics that we wanted to talk about, was relationships and how those are impacted by a diagnosis when you're younger, because you do have friends who are maybe, you're not at a stage of life where you expect your friends to be getting seriously ill. So how was it for you? How did it impact on, I don't know, your personal relationships with friends, family, or partner?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, I think, as Chris said, very, I'm a controlling sort of person. Not controlling, but, I like to take control of my life, I like to get on with it and do things. And so, my partner at the time, the relationship I had, was very much me organising life, and, we were getting on with stuff. And then suddenly I'm the one who's being looked after, and suddenly that dynamic completely changes everything. And that was actually quite difficult for us to deal with, took a while. Friends and family, again, normally I'm the one that's in control, and my parents, I tended to be the responsible adult in my family, So suddenly I'm sat there in hospital and they're having to drive me about for a change, And that was, again, strange. But I think to some degree it brought me closer to some people. So I think, especially my dad, I spent a lot more time with him than I had done the rest of my life. My brothers both in the army, and they're very traditional, you just get yourself up and, brush yourself down, you're fine,
Pull yourself together.
Yeah, very much. And I remember my brother Russell, who have a very straightforward relationship, where are you, what are we doing? Yeah, okay, great. That's the limit of our conversations. He came into hospital to see me. He said, hello, so how are things? And I'm, yeah, fine, thank you. And then the best way to describe it was that he sicked up a tear. So he just sort of looked at me and says, so everything's okay, yes? I'm like, yeah, it's okay. And then he went, and I sort of realised there is an emotional side to him. But you sort of realise, I think it does put things in perspective.
And Chris, were you married already?
Yeah,
when you were diagnosed?
So I actually, I got married in 2014, so we were getting married the first week of September, and I was diagnosed in kind of mid-October. So I'd actually been experiencing kind of everyone who's got bowel cancer in the room will probably say, I was going to my doctor about, and being told I had IBS, etc., for months. So I was already experiencing symptoms. A lot of it I was putting down to stress of organising the wedding. So we'd got married in September. We went on honeymoon when we were in New York, and I was having kind of like bad symptoms when we were there. So it was when we kind of came back from honeymoon I was actually diagnosed. But it's kind of a weird thing, because obviously there's a risk that it kind of defines our marriage, because we were together for quite a long time before, obviously, and then so actually, pretty much the whole time we've been married, I've had cancer. But I suppose the things I'd say is that, you know, we do the whole thing together. So, you know, all the key appointments, it's like, it's not me dealing, I feel like it's not me dealing with cancer and then Martin kind of dealing with me having cancer. It's kind of like both of us dealing with me having cancer. And that really helps. But that's not to say we're not different in how we approach things. And I think any relationship, you have to be kind of mindful that people have different approaches. So I'm much more into kind of, you know, talking to people and networking and that kind of thing. You know, whereas Martin is not here, and I think you've struggled to get him here.
Is he watching it live?
There's actually a running joke amongst the Shine like people from our escape was whether Martin actually exists. Because no one's ever met him. And he does exist, and he is very supportive. But yeah, so it does, you know, it is a thing we have to balance, and partners make huge sacrifices as well. And, you know, things like his career have had to, you know, have been impacted by my cancer and treatment as well. And we've had to kind of make decisions together. And sometimes I have to actually say, no, you need to make a decision in your interest as well. So yeah, it's hard, but you know, it's the strongest thing in my, it's the, you know, best thing in my life is having him there.
And I mean, that's one of the reasons we started the Plus Ones group, was because we kind of came to, I suppose for Emma and I, obviously we'd only ever seen the cancer experience from our own perspectives, and then maybe as we, you know, moved a little bit farther away from it, then we started to realize, like, oh, the people around us have been affected as well. And then talking to other people, you know, just realizing how stressful it is to watch someone you care about go through cancer, whether it's their child or their brother or sister or their partner, or a very close friend. So, so Jess, I'm going to come to you, and I know you won't mind me saying this. Jess is single, single and dating. So tell us about dating with cancer.
Well, that's a fun one.
And we haven't got 6 hours because
So when I was diagnosed, a month later, I split up with my then boyfriend, and we planned it because he moved overseas, but we were together for 3 years, so it was pretty shit getting cancer and then, you know, that relationship ending. For the first 6 months, I was just having intensive treatment. I had fertility preservation and just didn't have any mental space at all. But about 6 months later, I got back on the horse, as it were. Joined up. That's a really awful way to say it.
everyone was just letting that one slide. And then
moving swiftly on. So when do you tell someone you've got cancer? I mean, that is the question that I get asked all the time.
And it comes up like in the Shine online group
Yeah,
a lot, right?
absolutely.
Those are the feeds that have the most responses.
I did a podcast for Shine actually on dating, Robin and I did, and I found that just whenever it feels natural, I've told quite a few people on the first date.
And how did that go over?
Well, my philosophy is when it feels right, you talk about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it comes up on the first date just naturally. Obviously, I'm used to having those conversations about health because of my arthritis and colitis, and I'm totally relaxed about that and very open about it. Although with cancer, you never know what baggage the other person has as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's not gone down well a couple of times. I think just because people can't cope with it because of aforementioned baggage. But my philosophy is if someone can't handle it, then they're not worth your time anyway. So in that respect, I think it's a very good leveler, actually. And I've had some amazing reactions. So I would say with dating, you have to be ready to do it, because your emotional and physical resilience will be a lot lower than it was before. And you have to program in breaks as well. So I'll date intensively for a couple of weeks, and then I just won't do anything for a month to just give myself a bit of time to recover.
Yeah.
But I did actually meet somebody a couple of months ago who's my nearly boyfriend. So, and with him it was quite funny because I didn't tell him for our first couple of weeks that we were dating. And then he lost his phone, so we couldn't get in touch with each other, and he found me on Facebook, and he bloody read on Facebook that I've got cancer before I told him. So then the next time I saw him, I was like, so there's something I wanted to talk to you about. And he was like, And I sort of built myself up and told him, and he was like, yeah, I read that on your Facebook, and I was mortified. But he was so lovely, and he said, you know, he was just waiting until I wanted to talk about it, so.
Aww.
I know.
Nice story. And Robin, what about you? Because you dated after treatment as well, right?
So I went through a phase of, you know, we decided that relationship wasn't working, and I was sort of single again. And I think it is difficult. I had a similar thing, you know, had a few dates where I spoke to some people and tried different things. It was just, you know, it was a bit of a sort of trial and error thing, really. And some people took it, like, I think everybody was kind about it. Nobody said, oh, that's a bit scary, you know. They're all kind about it, but some people just found it was too much to deal with, you know. But I think, like Jess said, you know, you've got to find, if it's the right person, it's the right person, you know. And I've since met a girl who I get on very well with. We just,
They're buying a house together.
So romantic.
so yeah, quite well settled now. But we, she, I mean, one thing she said, which I thought was quite interesting, I hadn't really sort of thought about it, was that, you know, she feels like she's missed out a little bit, you know, not having been there for me at that time. And, you know, I think she I mean, I know she would have done anything she could for me at the time. So she's probably got a bit of a disconnect because she didn't see me in that period without hair and eyebrows and eyelashes and all that stuff. You know, it is a bit tricky for her to understand, I suppose. But, you know, I know that she's there for me and everything, and, you know, if there are any questions, or, you know, when it comes to things like this, she understands it's important, and, you know.
And what about with your friends? How have your friendships changed as a result? I mean, anyone can answer that.
I think it depends on the people, you know. I had, you know, so I've got, you know, quite a good core group of lads, you know. And typically boys don't really talk about emotional stuff, you know. So we just, when I see my mates, it's just about having a beer together and, you know, so you are well, aren't you? Yeah, no, doing fine. Okay, good. And that's basically as far as it goes. But it's quite nice. We all know that, you know, I know that I can chat with them, and they all came to see me in hospital and everything. And we just sort of, it's about having fun with your friends. And I think it's quite nice to be in a room of full of people who have been through similar things, so you can have a chat in more detail or depth without making it awkward. You know?
Yeah, because there's a funny kind of balance between, like, wanting your friends to know what you've gone through, but not wanting to be the cancer bore, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, well, with my cancer.
But that's exactly why I wrote my blog, because, you know, even for my mum, I didn't really want to talk to her about it, you know, and she was, every day she would come in and say, so how's things, what's going, what's your treatment, what's next? I'm like, I just want to sit and watch Game of Thrones. But, you know, I think writing the blog was quite a good way for, if they want to read about it, they can do. If they're not interested, fine, you know, it's up to them. And, like, I think the biggest thing, and I've heard other people say this before, you don't want to be a burden, you know, you don't want to affect their lives. So you want everything to be normal and back to okay, but, you know, sometimes you do need people around you to talk to and stuff, and luckily I've got a fairly good family that's there. But, yeah, some friends can be a bit, I think it depends on who they are and what their interest levels are. And, you know.
And have you guys had friends, because we often hear from people who say that they, you know, it's kind of like some people who really step up are not necessarily the people you would have expected, and then other people that you were quite close to can sort of drift away. Was that your experience at all?
Yeah, I think I've had, by and large, my friends have been great. I've got, you know, I suppose I've probably got like a kind of largish circle of sort of friends, and then, you know, like most people, then, you know, some very good friends, like a smaller number. And my very good friends have been amazing, and in fact some people have kind of almost stepped up and become closer friends. Partly it comes down to, like, practical things. It's like, if you've got cancer, you're probably not going to be going out clubbing. And I've got, like, a load of friends sort of in a wider circle who would be people I knew from nights out and from late nights drinking, and I don't do that anymore. And a lot of those people have just they've just drifted away, and I don't have anything to do with them. But then there are other people that have actually become closer friends because actually they live nearby, and maybe they're around in the week because you might be sort of not working every day or whatever, and you're at home. So I don't know, your friendships kind of adapt to your life in a way. But I wouldn't say there's many people. I haven't had any like awful reactions where it's become a kind of problem with a particular friend. But maybe I just don't notice it. Maybe I just kind of, if someone drifts away because they're uncomfortable, I've probably just forgotten about them.
That's the best way, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Forget that you're dead to
Just
me.
fickleness, it's fine.
Because I think one of the things that both Jess and Chris have said is about people, having their own baggage or not knowing how to deal with it. And I think we forget that, people aren't given a book on like how to deal with your friend or your family member being diagnosed with cancer. So it's all down to their past experiences and how they deal with things. And sometimes we're not in the right place, probably having just been diagnosed, to support them to learn that. So sometimes you lose those people,
I
unfortunately.
think in my experience, a lot of people just don't know what to say. But actually, I've had people say to me, I just don't know what to say to you. And that is so much better than saying nothing. And I think one thing that I've tried to do is to tell my friends what I need, which can be difficult, but I think it's really worth you spending time thinking about that, because most people in your life will want to help you, but they don't know what to do. So, for example, I was in the middle of decorating my flat when I was diagnosed and couldn't finish it. So one of my friends organised a load of friends to come over and finish it for me when I was on holiday. And they filled up my freezer with food because I didn't have the energy to go to the shops. And just little practical things like that can make such a big difference. I've never got round to doing it, but I meant to create a list of jobs and then send that to people, and then they could just choose what they wanted to do.
I might do that anyway.
I had cancer 7 years ago. Can you go shopping for me?
I do sometimes say that to Steve, my husband. I'm like, can you get me a glass of water? Because I had cancer. And he's like, I've been looking after someone with cancer for 7 years. You get me the glass of water.
And then they get their daughter to go get it.
I guess one of the final theme we wanted to talk about was about, how have you created, because it sounds like you guys have been lucky with your friends and your family, but not everybody has that because maybe they live, away from their friends, or they're not close to their family, or they don't have a big family. And I guess the question is sort of how, if you do find yourself sort of feeling alone in this experience, what would you guys recommend doing, and what's really helped you to cope with that feeling? Because in a sense, when you are ill, we are all alone. It can be a really lonely and isolating place to be. And that's one of the reasons that we do what we do at Shine, is because we want to make it a little bit less lonely.
I mean, it was sort of strange because actually my professional work, I work for a charity, and we actually do lots around peer support. So this was almost like a strange experiment, and I sort of got cancer so I could try out some of the approaches. It seemed really obvious. So for me, it seemed really obvious that some kind of peer-to-peer support would be the way to go, and I kind of almost then sort of sought out Shine. But I guess, I think you do have to kind of put yourself forward a little bit. So if you want to take advantage, and I'm not, that's can be a really hard thing to do, it's like going to your first event or something. But I think, I would just say to people to sort of jump in, because actually, it's an amazingly welcome network. And then the other thing is, I do like loads of sort of I have like fingers in lots of different pies. I'm like always been involved in like politics and local community things. But since I've been ill, I actually sort of started volunteering for a new charity and was doing, have taken on a position with that. And people go, but you've got cancer and you're trying to balance treatment and work, and you're doing something else as well. But actually, cancer shouldn't stop our lives going on. So actually, maybe you should take up a new hobby, like, while you've got cancer. And actually, it's nothing to do with cancer, and it's just something new to do, which is that you enjoy. I don't think we should kind of limit ourselves to sort of go, fitting a certain model of what you should be doing.
And that's actually an interesting thing, because I think cancer does feel so limiting. When it happens, when you are ill, it can be really easy to start, not easy, but you can very often feel like you're surrounded by walls that are stopping you from doing things. So have you guys done that at all? Have you sort of tried new things since?
I started after I'd sort of finished treatment, and I did start too soon, if I'm honest, in hindsight, but I did start looking for, charities and events and things. I thought, well, and my view, which I soon learned wasn't the case, was I thought I was going to go and help others. So I went to a Macmillan event to try and sort of see if I can connect with people and to help out. As soon as talking to people, I realised actually I need help. I was like, I haven't really talked about any of this to anybody. Yeah. And then a couple of people I spoke to recommended Shine, and I'd already realised I spoke to you, because I think you were there at the event actually. Yeah. And then going to the Escape and talking to people online, I realised just talking to people and connecting and having conversations, I think really is quite powerful, because, like I said, your friends are there, and they carried me across Glastonbury when I was quite ill, and they did things for me, but just to talk about the detail of how it affects you in a sort of emotional way, especially being a typical boy, it's quite difficult, and talking to people, I think it's really, that's one thing I would say, is meet other people, come to these events, have a chat with the person sat next to you.
Yeah, I can't overstate the importance of just meeting people who get it, and you don't even have to talk about cancer, but you just know that they know, and that's so powerful. And I think that's where the social network is so brilliant as well, because a lot of the time I've not even been able to leave my house, but I'm able to talk to people on the Facebook page. I think the most important thing I could say about building a network, whether that's amongst your own friends or a new network like Shine, is to try and be honest with yourself. Having cancer's the loneliest I've ever been, and I'm still struggling with depression as a result of it. But I'm able to sit here and say that now, which is a massive step forward. And when I'm really struggling, it's the friends I've made through Shine. They're the only people that I can talk to, really, and they help, get me out of bed and get me doing stuff again. And so I think there's something about being authentic and being true to yourself, and it's okay to be struggling, because I'd be astonished if any of you hadn't struggled at least a little bit with depression or anxiety as a result of having cancer. But Shine is amazing. It's changed my life. I've met some incredible people, and can't thank Emma and Kynwyn enough, really.
But yeah, I think the emotional impact of cancer also is something, like, so much in the press is about, you, like you said, it's an acute condition, you're diagnosed, you're treated, you basically either you live or you die, and then if you live, yay, you run the London Marathon and raise loads of money and everyone's really happy for you. But I think that's a really important point about, coming through that aftermath and living with the anxiety of, is it going to come back, or it's never gone away, so how do I live the best life I can given the situation I'm in, is really difficult. Have you guys, that must be something that has...
Yeah, anxiety has been a problem for me at times, and I tend to kind of obsess over things that I'm thinking about anyway, so it's possible for me to kind of go into quite an unhealthy place if I do that. And I do think, you're right about, it's trying to live the best life you can in the situation you're in, and you actually have to, sometimes accept that sort of you've changed, and, if you're at work and you're doing a particular type of work, actually you might not be suited to that because it requires kind of sitting and concentrating on a certain thing, and actually I struggle sometimes to concentrate, particularly when I'm on chemo. So you kind of have to know what your limitations are and just try to adapt and work with it. because the alternative is just kind of beating yourself up about it, and that's just completely pointless, and sort of is that sort of downward spiral. So I think, you know, you have to be sort of kind to yourself and adapt as best you can.
And have you found that, Robin, like that you've had to adapt, I don't know, either physically or emotionally to sort of life after treatment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I spent the first 12 months after I finished chemo trying to get back to normal, you know, trying to get on with my life. You know, I went to stag do's and weddings all over the place, and you know, just trying to party and all that sort of stuff. And you know, you forget you're getting old anyway. You know? And you know, with all that, and I think sometimes I put too much pressure on myself, if I'm honest. You know, I think I'm learning, I suppose, to say no a bit more. You know, and to just live your life and get on with it, you know, and don't put pressure on yourself, because I think everybody deals with things in different ways, you know. I think one thing I have realised is that everybody's experience of it, whether it's, you know, your friends and family, your personal experience, everybody is different. There's no, I mean, we categorise ourselves as all these, we're in this cancer bubble, but, you know, we're all individuals, you know, all different. So you just got to just take it as it comes and just get on with life, you know.
Yeah. One thing I read recently, Sheryl Sandberg, who's the chief operating officer of Facebook, she's written a book because her husband passed away, but it's called Option B, or I think, and it's because she says, you know, she really wanted option A, which was that her husband was with her, and a friend of hers said, you know, if option A isn't available, you've got to kick the shit out of option B. And I kind of like that, because it means, you know, your life has limitations and is different, but yeah, let's all find a way to kick the shit out of it anyway. And on that note, the last thing that we wanted to ask you guys, Emma and I are always very fond of playing the cancer card as much as possible. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
It doesn't work with her, I've tried.
But what is your best play of the cancer card?
Getting extra water on aeroplanes is for me.
Aim high, eh?
Because I do have to drink a lot of water, but whenever I always get disabled assistance when I fly, which is amazing. Jump all queues, and get extra pillows and loads of extra water, and just the air hostess is being super nice to you.
And are you just saying, like, I've got cancer?
I've got cancer.
I mean, if you've got it, use it, right? So, yeah. Robin?
Well, I think for me, so the company I worked for closed because of me being off for 6 months. Didn't help.
You were that important.
I was that important. But anyway, I sort of played the cancer card, picking up the phone to some of the old customers, and managed to win some pretty big contracts because they kind of felt a bit sorry for me. So I think that's probably my best one.
Returning to the theme of me and my husband kind of approaching this as a team, so it's actually him playing the cancer card, but he worked where he worked when I was diagnosed. They were actually doing like a kind of work, like the whole company going away for a boozy weekend, and he basically said, oh yeah, we can't, we won't be able to do that. He hates drinking and stuff, so he can't do that because Chris has got cancer. So his company actually paid for us to go to Tenerife for 5 nights and stay in a 5-star hotel. Rather than go on the boozy weekend, he didn't want to go on anyway. So
I think Chris is now winning the cancer card top trump as well, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I mean, we encourage anyone to play the cancer card as much and as often as possible. You never know what you can get. I know people who have had upgrades on flights or, a nicer hotel room. And what did you say once? It doesn't expire until you do.
Yeah. We were just talking about whether it was reasonable for us to, however long, this long from chemo, to think about, is it okay still to play the cancer card? And
yeah.
Well, it never leaves you. So.
Yeah, exactly. Keep on playing, people.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much. It's been really good. I mean, it's always great just to hear what people think and how their experiences are. We have a couple minutes. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask these guys? Oh.
But don't speak until the microphone gets to you, please.
Oh, yeah.
You do.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. It's just an observation, really, actually, about the work that you guys are doing in the market, the cancer market, as it were. And I'm just really impressed because my own journey started 10 years ago. And 10 years ago was cancer, mentioning the word was bloody frightening. And quite honestly, to see you guys up on the stage talking about it, laughing and joking, I'd just like to observe how far we have come as a society dealing with cancer. You know, we know there's a lot to do. Let's be fair, there's still a lot to do that we're all working towards. But for me, observing this, it's just an amazing thing that we're all talking openly about it, where before it wasn't talked about like that. So, you know, that's credit to groups like yourself and other people doing a lot of work out there. So it's just an observation.
And
really.
I should say Chris
Thank
is
you,
here
Chris.
because he is involved with a charity called Simplan, which gives...
Simpal.
Sorry, I keep calling it Simplan. Simpal.
It's not a slimming plan, by the way.
But he's got a little stand outside, which so they give.
We give
describe it.
phones and free SIM cards to people that are affected by cancer, not just the patient themselves, but people and friends. So anyway, if you'd like to come and see me later on, that'd be great. But credit to you guys for getting up there and talking about it and spreading the word. I think it's so valuable. Well done, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Anyone else?
No.
Oh.
There we are.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was diagnosed 3 months ago, and I'm just wondering if you guys have any pearls of wisdom about dealing with parents.
Bearing in mind there are some parents in the room.
I mean, I'm worried that my mum has worked out how to use Facebook Live. I mean, what's quite interesting is, I mean, my parents have been amazing. They've been, you know, it was awful for, you know, when they were actually in the flat when I came back from the kind of, I suppose I'd had the diagnosis and I went to see the surgeon and how bad it was, and they were kind of and they've been a big part of it, and you know they've given lots of support and done loads of things for us. But it's quite difficult to I think they probably struggle to switch off from it, and it's kind of like because I go back to work part time and sort of between cycles of chemo, and it's kind of like I'm still. They're used to then wanting to talk to me all the time, so I'm almost having to kind of say, oh, actually, I'm busy at work. Sorry, I haven't got time to talk about, how I am. So I think dealing with their kind of worry about it, and it's just a terrible thing for parents to have to deal with, to have a child going through this, and obviously, they'll say things like they wish it was them, not you, and all this kind of, and you just have to, I think you just have to treat them like anyone else in that, they'll have their own reaction to it, and you've got a relationship, and you just have to try and make it work as best you can, really.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. My mum's here, so, I'm not going to censor what I'm going to say. As Chris said, I think it's very difficult for parents. You're their child and they want to protect you. I think it's important that you don't take responsibility for them, because you should encourage them to get support, but it's okay for you to get support from them. That is part of their job as a parent, but they also need to get help. I think the other thing that's been crucial for me is honesty. So immediately after I was diagnosed, I was rushed into fertility preservation, and then the operation went wrong and I had ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome and bled out and was really, really ill. And my mum came to live with me for a couple of weeks after that. And I could hardly move, I couldn't walk, I couldn't dress myself. And all of my capacity, my emotional capacity was completely full. And I love my mum dearly. Hi, Mum. We're very, very similar, and we do each other's heads in a lot. And during that time, I just had no capacity for her to annoy me. I just couldn't deal with it. So that forced me just to be totally honest with her and say, Mum, I know you're trying to help, but when you do that, it really annoys me. So can you do this instead? And that actually worked really, really well. And we've got a much closer relationship now because of that. And it's hard to do, but be honest and tell them, like you would anybody else, what you need from them, and tell them what isn't helpful, which can be a very difficult conversation. But I just can't recommend doing that enough, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree that, I mean, for me especially, that was the hardest thing was, what am I going to say to my mum? How am I going to explain what's going on? Because I knew she wouldn't understand. It's so difficult, especially when I've had lots of, like, all my grandparents die of cancer and all that sort of stuff. It's how do you tell your mum? It's quite hard. But I think it was quite difficult for me. I found I didn't want to affect. I didn't want to sort of be a burden or anything. I just wanted to sort of get on with the treatment. I didn't want Mum coming in to the hospital every day and getting in the way. But my dad said to me, he says, well, she doesn't come here. It's not just for you, ultimately. She's coming here as much for her as she is for you. And that flipped that round a little bit. I sort of thought, well, maybe I should be a bit more open and honest with her. And it took a bit of time, but I think just being straightforward, I think, really helped. And because she didn't trust me to start with. When I was telling her, oh, everything's fine, it's okay, she's like, you've got like cables hanging out. It doesn't look fine. But then when I started telling her and being honest with her and telling her what was going on, I think it made it easier. And actually, I think probably have grown closer to both my parents, since. So I think, it's just be aware that, they don't mind if you shout at them and tell them to go away. But they're trying to help.
Normally come
they're
back.
just they're trying to help, and I think you just got to work with them.
Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the reasons we started the Plus Ones. If your parents are on Facebook, they can join that group, because we know from the workshops we've done now and the research that, of course it's hard. It's hard to watch anyone you care about go through cancer, but if they're your child, it's really difficult. And it's a tricky relationship because if you're not, it's not like you're, a little kid that you rely on your parents for everything. You have a more adult relationship. And yeah, it is really difficult. You kind of have to recalibrate the whole thing. But they're welcome to join Plus Ones if you want to let them know about it, because that's for close friends, family, partners. And then, they kind of have a forum to complain about you if they want to.
I think this is one of the things that one of the first Shine events we did way back, I think before we were even called Shine, was a Christmas event where we invited kind of partners and stuff. And I just remember my partner at the time saying, it was really great because I had a chance to moan about you. And I think actually, everywhere else he'd been, he was saying, oh, she's... it's really difficult to deal with her, and because I was a bit of a psycho, and everyone was saying, you can't say that, she's got cancer, you can't say that, So he wasn't able to get that kind of support from friends and stuff. So I think actually that, it's important for people to be able to access that. But there's a lot of kind of guilt and protection. We try and protect people from things, and actually, as these guys have said, ideally if you can be honest and share kind of how you feel or details that. People might want to know, then that's just a benefit, really. But it can be tough, especially when you're dealing with your own issues as well, and you don't really know, where your head is. It's hard to then try and protect someone else or deal with that.
There's a lot of information on the Shine website as well, and different podcasts, and I think that can be helpful to point any of your loved ones in the direction of, so that they can understand a bit more about what it's like for you. And the other thing I did was email my parents lots of information about the type of cancer that I've got, so they actually understood it, understood the treatment, what the prognosis is, etc., etc. Knowledge is power and all that.
Yeah. Okay, we're just about finished. Oh, Helen. Okay, last question, Helen.
Sorry, it can be. It can be super quick. quick answer. I'm Helen from the Lymphoma Association. I represent the Cancer Nursing Partnership as well. So I'm just curious about your experience as a young adult, probably in a setting where most people around you were a lot older than you. Is there anything that I can take back to that group to say, this is something that would make a big difference? Is there one thing as a young adult that you would like your medical teams to do differently?
We were on time.
Maybe we can talk about it over break.
I think the biggest thing for me, I spent quite a lot of time in hospital, and I've got nurses and people coming in all the time, just 8 o'clock in the morning to give you breakfast. I'm like, I just want to sleep. But the biggest thing I found was it's my fault. I was, everybody says, oh, is everything okay? And then rush off somewhere else. And I sort of said, yes, I'm fine. But I think I probably wanted somebody just to say, do you want to chat? Do you want to talk? Do you want to understand what's going on? Because I think I didn't really, I was trying to read it online and it was pretty crazy and scary. And I think, although I'd got lots of leaflets, it's like, I think probably needed a bit more of a chat, like more of a sort of heart-to-heart as much. And I think it's being a lad as well doesn't help, because your automatic response is, yeah, I'm fine, you get on, there's other busy people, other people to worry about, go and run off and do your job. But I think if there was people there to have time, and a really good example is that the lady came around to the hospital, came because I was on a ward of my own. The lady from I think it's from like the local Christian society or something, came in the room with the Bible and she says, "Oh right, you'll be okay, won't you?" And she walked out. That is so nothing to do.
It was the halo.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was actually quite looking forward to it.
I think actually that's important, because sometimes it's interesting that even you kind of think as a patient that, nurses and doctors and whoever else you're coming across will be used to dealing with all sorts of patients, but actually quite a lot of the reactions from staff can be quite surprising, can't it? Which is, I remember people always thought that my mum was the person having treatment when I was in hospital, taking my mum with me to appointments, but also people really unhelpfully will quite often comment on, "Oh, you're young, aren't you?" Yeah, thanks. But when it's the 5th time you've heard that, or when it's every time you go to the hospital, it kind of makes you feel more isolated as well, other than looking around the waiting room and seeing everybody else is 30 years older than you. But it adds to that sense of isolation, I think. So whilst it's nice to, people to acknowledge it, I guess, but just that, if you can try and stop the shocked look, might be quite nice.
I mean, it's not so much of an age thing, but I find sort of not looking. I don't. I've got my hair while on chemo. I haven't got a particular sort of skin problem on my face, so people don't come in and think, "Oh, you look awful." And I do find there's this sort of element of people come in and say, "Oh, is it your first cycle?" And I say, "No."
And you're like,
And so there is that kind of thing. You don't look how people expect a cancer patient to look, and I think age is part of that too.
Yeah.
I suppose the other thing, generally, I wouldn't say my experience has been bad at all. Actually, it's been good, but I know a lot of people sort of my age, maybe people that have like young children, they're working at the same time, and a lot of it is kind of set up without any real kind of reference to actually. So when you're talking with nurses about what you're doing during the week and how you're managing it, it's like sort of almost like stay indoors and protect yourself from anything. It's like, well, I've got to get on the Victoria line to go to work, so I'm going to be quite close to a lot of people. So I think it's like understanding that people have different lives and will be doing different things during their week.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, mine's exactly the same. The issues that I struggled with and continue to struggle with are working, how to maintain my career when I'm right in the middle of it, dating, living on my own, and fertility. And those things are all things that all of the granddads who've got my type of cancer don't really struggle with. And most of the provision of information for people with cancer, it's all about getting back to work or claiming benefits, not actually what to do when you've got a busy career and you're in the middle of it. So I think that's what's different about this group, and I think that's why Shine's so great, because it's plugging some of those gaps.
So, well, Helen's on the Lymphoma Association stand, so stop by and give her some more information. So thank you guys so much. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you.